Hey everyone, I'm Aidan Walls, and today we're going to talk about lenses. So essentially this video is just me gushing about my amazing Micro Four Thirds lenses. If you are into the Micro Four Thirds system, this is definitely something for you to check out. I'm going to be talking about the equivalent lenses for full frame, so it might be of interest for you, but this is very much for people looking to make video and photos with the Micro Four Thirds system. So specifically photography, when I bought lenses for the system, I have a dedicated video camera, the one I'm talking on now, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, and then I have the Lumix, the extra angle that I've created there. That is my photography camera. So when I bought lenses, I bought them with my photography in mind, and then I got an extra lens as a sort of all-rounder to cover me for video as well. Firstly, what everyone is concerned about when they move to Micro Four Thirds or are using Micro Four Thirds, or when they talk about full frame, is background blur. It's something that you can't get away from. It creates a certain quality that everybody's looking for. It's a subconscious thing. When you look at an image and it's got decent background blur, it just tells your brain that it's a higher end photo. And so everybody needs a background bokeh blur beast. So what you need to do is manipulate the system. You need, the more zoomed in a lens is, so the longer the focal length, the 50mm, 100mm, 200mm, the more you zoom in, the more background you're gonna get. But the problem is, if the lens is too zoomed in, you're gonna have to stand super far away to get the shots. So you need a lens that's gonna zoom in a bit to create a bit of background blur. You need it to be super wide open, a very wide aperture. And then for product shots, you can just move closer to get even more background blur. The lens on the Micro Four Thirds system that I believe you should be getting for that is the Sigma 56mm f1.4. Firstly, it's incredibly sharp. It's super sharp, which means you can step away, take a photo, and then crop it further, kind of zoom in, because because it's so sharp, even when you zoom in, it still looks nice and crisp. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it is just incredibly built. It's a really good quality lens. And the third thing is it's an f1.4. So the aperture is nice and wide open. And then fourthly, I'm getting this list a little bit too long now, but fourthly, you're going 56mm. So that's a little bit longer focal length than what you would use on APS-C or especially on full frame. On full frame, this is a 112mm lens. It's still in the range of an acceptable portrait lens, but most people would say that's a telephoto portrait lens. So it's super zoomed in, but in practice, I would say for portraits, I need to be 1.5 meters, maybe 2 meters away from the subject to get a decent photo. I'll put some photos that I've taken with this, specifically portraits, on the screen now. So essentially, for me, when you getting lenses for your Micro Four Thirds system, you need a bokeh beast, and this is it. Secondly, you need a standard lens. This is a lens that you can have on your camera at all times. As you can hear, I'm a bit of a prime lens. I'm not into zoom lenses. I like single focal length lenses. So you've got your bokeh beast, you now need your standard lens. A standard lens on full frame is a 50mm. So on Micro Four Thirds, that's 25mm. Fortunately, Micro Four Thirds has a huge selection of standard lenses. I'm going to suggest two. The one is not as wide open. I'll put it up on the screen now, and it's their slightly cheaper 25mm lens. It's made by Lumix. Lumix have partnered with Leica. This is not a Lumix Leica branded lens, but obviously they've learned from working with Leica, so their lenses have really gotten good. So that's a good place to start. If you want an even wider aperture lens, I would say really save up the money and get the Lumix Leica f1.4. I found it secondhand here in South Africa, and there are so many secondhand Micro Four Thirds lenses. It is a wonderful prime. I think the thing about this lens, it's on the camera now, so I'm speaking to it now. I'm shooting wide open, so I think in some instances I'm actually out of focus. But you'll see, I think if I sit here, it's really sharp. But that's not really the huge deal with this lens. It's just the character of the lens. It's a Lumix Leica lens, so Leica have been involved in the making of this lens. I don't know a lot about lens manufacturing, but there's just something very special about the out of focus bits in the background, about how it renders the subject, even the color. It's just a stunning, beautiful lens. I wish they would make a lens like this because I would buy it in a heartbeat. It just is a beautiful quality lens, and it spends most of its time on my Blackmagic camera for video, and when I take photos, it's on the camera. It's the most used lens that I use. And when I switched from Fuji and I got the Blackmagic and I got my Lumix camera, when I switched, I needed to know that I was getting the lenses I need to do my job, and I've been doing it for a while, so I kind of knew I could whittle it down to a few lenses. So it was these two prime lenses that I wanted. I still need a long range zoom for events and, you know, just for running around. I quite enjoy a nice long range, like 200-300 millimeter. And I'll put on the screen, there's a really cheap long range lens. If you're not super into like wildlife photography, you don't want an incredible lens, there's a cheap, don't think it's image stabilized, but it's $100. I nearly bought it the other day when I got a gift card from Amazon. Really great, affordable, long range lens. And then lastly, on this camera, I have the 14 to 45 millimeter lens. It is, I wouldn't say it's super sharp. It's not the sharpest lens out of these three. It's not really a huge issue to me, but it does kind of add a nice quality to when you're taking photos. This lens is mostly for video, like these kind of situations. Obviously, it's got the 14 millimeter, so it's my wide angle lens for photography. But because it's got a little zoom on it, it's really versatile. And the thing about this lens is image stabilized. So on the Lumix camera with the IBIS, I'll put a shot on the screen now that I've done handheld. Super smooth. I actually, as soon as I discovered this combination, my gimbal is just sitting. Unless I want to put the Blackmagic on a gimbal, I kind of just use this setup, that lens on the Lumix, running around, and it's perfect. It's also really nice if I am using the Blackmagic handheld and I'm just holding it still, put a bit of weight on the Blackmagic camera and I just hold it nice and still, I can get nice handheld shots with the Blackmagic because it's image stabilized. So that kind of compensates for all the areas. So if you're a hybrid shooter, this is also a little bit of advice for you, that this is a great combination of lenses in the ecosystem of Micro Four Thirds. Anyway, I really believe in these lenses. I get very excited to use this lens, to use that lens. They really are lovely little lenses. They're the only two primes I own. I have some vintage lenses that I use from time to time, but really I take lots of photos with this, and I take most of my photos with the 25 millimeter because it's just so versatile and gives such a lovely rendering. And if I get close to my subjects, then I still get that lovely like blown out background. Yep, those are my picks. If you're a Micro Four Thirds user, pop in the comment what your favorite lenses are. But to me, if you're getting started and you follow my advice, you're not going to be disappointed. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.